Hello everyone! We're in Rome. In this video, we'll continue our visit through this museum of a city and find out together how we can enjoy this place without spending too much money. And for even more ideas of free places to visit in Rome, after you finish watching this video, take a look in the description or in the card above for the link to our previous clip. When we said goodbye last time, we left you in Piazza Rotonda, and today we're starting the trip from the same place. We're going to the Church of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And on the way to the church, we passed by the monument of the heroes of the First World War. The Church of Sant'Ignazio di Loyola in Campo Marzio is a titular Roman Catholic church of diaconal rank, dedicated to Saint Ignazio di Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus based in Rome. Built in the Baroque style between 1626 and 1650, the church has the shape of a Latin cross, with a length of 81.5 meters and a width of 43 meters, with an apsidal presbytery and 6 side chapels, 3 on the left and 3 on the right. The church is well known for the paintings of Andrea Pozzo, simulating in perspective a second plane superimposed on the first, the real plane of the church, which transports us to another dimension if we stand on the point marked on the floor with a golden disc and look up. The painting depicts Saint Ignatius with Christ making the sign of the cross. A beam of light radiates from Christ and illuminates Ignatius, from whom it in turn refracts to the 4 allegorical figures around him, representing the 4 continents known at that time. Another mark on the floor, a little further towards the altar, marks the ideal point for observing a second drawing in perspective, above the cross altar, which reproduces the image of a dome. In the apse, scenes of Saint Ignazio's life are represented, painted by Andrea Pozzo between 1685 and 1688. In the center, the vision of Saint Ignazio alla Storta. In the apse basin, Saint Ignazio healing the victims of the plague. And in the vault, the defense of Pamplona, in which Saint Ignatius was injured. Andrea Pozzo painted on the left wall of the apse the mission of San Francesco Saverio to the Indies, while on the right wall he painted Saint Ignazio welcoming San Francesco Borgia into the Society of Jesus. In the church we can see a wooden model of the Temple of Christ the King, created by Vincenzo Pandolfi. The artist's idea was to unite the religions of the world under one big church, assuming the extinction of all wars to achieve universal peace. Around the perimeter of the temple are represented 56 reproductions of places of worship located in many countries around the world. The artist began the work at the age of 70 and finished it the year he turned 98, just 2 years before his death. The work, on a scale of 1 to 200, is made of different species of precious wood. From here we're going to Fontana di Trevi, an 18th century fountain in the Trevi district of Rome. The fountain was designed by the Italian architect Niccolò Salvi and completed by Giuseppe Panini in 1762. At 23.6 meters high and 49.15 meters wide, it is the largest Baroque fountain in the city and one of the most famous fountains in the world. The fountain is located at the intersection of 3 roads. Hence the name, which derives from the Latin word for trivium, intersection of 3 streets, Via Crociferi, Via Poli and Via delle Murate. The fountain is supplied with water by one of the aqueducts that supplied water to ancient Rome, Aqua Vergine. The legend says that in 19th BC, with the help of a virgin, Roman builders located a source of pure water approximately 13 kilometers from the city. And this is where the name of the Aqua Vergine aqueduct allegedly comes from. The myth of the Trevi fountain says that if you throw a coin into it, you will return to Rome. But the coin must be thrown using the right hand over the left shoulder. It is estimated that 30,000 euros are thrown into the well every day, and in 2016 around 1.4 million euros were thrown into it. The money was used to subsidize a supermarket for Rome's poorest. However, there are regular attempts to take coins from the fountain, even though it is illegal. The fountain appeared in several movies, including Roman Holiday, Three Coins in the Well, Federico Fellini's classical La Dolce Vita, Sabrina Goes to Rome, and the Lizzie McGuire movie. On our walk, we cross Via Corso d'Italia and we admire the remains of the city's old walls. And we've arrived in Piazza del Popolo, which is a large urban square in Rome. The name in Italian literally means People's Square, after which the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo in the northern corner of the square has taken its name. The square is inside the Aurelian walls after you pass the northern gate, once Porta Flamenia of ancient Rome and now called Porta del Popolo. This was the starting point of Via Flamenia, the road to Areminium, today's city of Rimini, and the most important route to the north. For centuries, Piazza del Popolo was a place of public execution, the last of which took place in 1826. Today's layout of the square was designed in a neoclassical style between 1811 and 1822 by the architect Giuseppe Valadier. An Egyptian obelisk of Seti I, later erected by Ramses II of Heliopolis, stands in the center of the square. Three sides of the obelisk were created during the reign of Seti I, and the fourth side under Ramses II. The obelisk, known as the Flaminio obelisk or the Popolo obelisk, is the second oldest and one of the tallest obelisks in Rome, about 24 meters high. The obelisk was brought to Rome in 10 BC by order of Augustus and was originally installed in the Circus Maximus, and then moved here in the square by the architect and engineer Domenico Fontana in 1589 as part of an urban plan of Sixtus V. In the square we can see Fontana del Nettuno, Neptune's fountain, which is located in the western part of the square. Neptune, with his trident, is accompanied by two tritons. And on the opposite side of the square, mirroring it, sits Fontana della Dea di Roma, or Fountain of the Goddess of Rome, which Valadier used to connect the square with the heights of the Pincio, the Pincian hill of ancient Rome, on which the Villa Borghese garden now stands. Behind the Fountain of the Goddess of Rome are four statues that are actually replicas of ancient Tarabostes works. The original Dacian statues are preserved in the National Museum of Naples and were taken from Trajan's Forum. And next to it is the rostra column, which is a commemorative column of Greek and Roman tradition that was erected to commemorate a naval victory. This has a stem decorated with a prow, and at the top has a commemorative monument from the wars with the Dacians. In the square there are also two twin churches, Santa Maria dei Miracoli and Santa Maria di Montesanto. These are located in Piazza del Popolo, facing the northern gate of the Aurelian walls, at the entrance to Via del Corso and the square. The churches are often referred to as twins due to their similar exterior appearance, but some differences exist, both in plan and exterior details. Viewed from the square, the two churches define the so-called trident of streets starting from Piazza del Popolo. Starting from the left, Via Babuino, Via del Corso, and Via di Ripetta. The first two are separated by Santa Maria in Montesanto and the last one by Santa Maria dei Miracoli. The origin of the two churches dates from the 17th century restoration of what was the main entrance to Rome in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, on Via Flaminia. From here we go to the parish basilica of Santa Maria del Popolo, which is a titular church and a minor basilica run by the Augustine order and is located on the northern side of Piazza del Popolo. The church contains works by several famous artists such as Raphael, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, Caravaggio, Alessandro Algardi, Pinturicchio, Andrea Bregno, Guillaume de Marcia, and Donato Bramante. The legend of the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo revolves around the evil legend of Emperor Nero. As the story goes, after his suicide, Nero was buried in the mausoleum of his paternal family, the Domiziano Barbi, at the foot of the Pincian Hill. The tomb was later buried under a landslide, and a giant walnut tree grew on top of his ruins. The tree became haunted by a multitude of vicious demons that harassed the inhabitants and the travelers arriving to the city. Some were frightened, some possessed, some beaten with cruelty and wounded, others nearly strangled or killed. On the Thursday after the third Sunday of Lent in 1099, the Pope organized a procession. With crucifix in hand, he walked along the urban portion of Via Flaminia until he reached the area of the walnut tree. There, Paschal II performed the rite of exorcism and then struck the walnut tree at the root with the crucifix, causing the evil spirits to burst out screaming. When the whole tree was removed, the remains of Nero were discovered amongst the ruins, so the Pope ordered that they be thrown into the Tiber. Paschal II laid the first stone at the altar that was erected on the former site of the walnut tree. It was incorporated into a simple chapel that was completed in 3 days. The legend was told by an Augustine monk, Giacomo Alberici, in his treatise on the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, which was published in Rome in 1599. In the church is the tomb of Giovanni Battista Gisleni, an Italian architect, and it is probably the most macabre funeral monument in the basilica and probably the city. The monument is placed between a wooden cabin closed by a stone semi-column on the right side of the counter facade. The monument was designed and installed by the architect himself in 1670, 2 years before his death. From here, we're going to Piazza Navona, which was built on the site of the Mission Stadium. The piazza was built in the 1st century AD and follows the shape of the open space of the stadium. The ancient Romans went there to watch the agons, which means races, and was therefore known as Circus Agonalis, the competitions arena. It is believed that over time the name changed to Avone, and then to Navone, and finally to Navona. Piazza Navona was transformed into an example of Baroque Roman architecture and art during the pontificate of Innocent X, who reigned from 1644 to 1655, and his family's palace, Palazzo Pamphili, faces the square. In the square is the Fontana dei Quattro Fiumi, Fountain of the Four Rivers, which was designed in 1651 by Gian Lorenzo Bernini for Pope Innocent X. The base of the fountain is a basin, from the center of which rises travertine rocks to support the four river gods, and above them a copy of an Egyptian obelisk decorated with emblems of the Pamphili family, a dove with an olive branch. The statues represent four major rivers of the four continents through which papal authority has spread: the Nile representing Africa, the Danube representing Europe, the Ganges representing Asia, and the Rio de la Plata representing America. A second fountain, the Fontana del Moro, Fountain of the Moor, is a fountain located at the southern end of Piazza Navona, and it depicts a nautical scene with newts, dolphins, and a shell. It was originally designed by Giacomo della Porta in the 1570s, with further contributions by Gian Lorenzo Bernini in the 1650s. Bernini sculpted a large terracotta model of the central figure which Giovanni Antonio Mari used as a guide when he sculpted the final figure. Some of the original sculptures were moved to Galleria Borghese in 1874. There is also a third fountain, Neptune's Fountain, located at the north end of Piazza Navona, which was once called Fontana dei Calderari because it was located near a small alley with blacksmiths' workshops, pottery workshops, and others that made pans and other metal objects. From here we head towards Piazza Spagna, but on the way we stop to admire the column of the Immaculate Conception, in Italian La Columna della Immaculata Concezione, a 19th century monument that depicts the Holy Virgin Mary at the top. The monument is located in the so-called Piazza Mignanelli, towards the southeast of Piazza Spagna, and was placed in front of the offices of the Palazzo de Propaganda Fide, which houses the Congregation of the Evangelization of the Peoples. The Corinthian column was carved in ancient Rome and discovered on September 17, 1777 during the construction of the monastery of the Benedictine order Santa Maria della Concezione in Campo Marzio, located in the area, the site of the former campus Martius. Due to its incomplete construction, the column had probably never been used and may have been in the remains of a marble workshop. The marble base bears four bas-reliefs: the Annunciation, the Dream of Saint Joseph, the Coronation of the Virgin, and the Promulgation of the Dogma. At the base of the column are four statues of biblical figures who foretold the birth of the Virgin, each accompanied by a quote from a biblical verse in Latin: King David, Isaiah the prophet, Ezekiel the seer, and the patriarch Moses, who is represented with horns due to an ambiguity in the Hebrew word keren, which means both horn and beam. In Jerome's Latin Vulgate translation of the Bible, the face of Moses is depicted as cornutam, horned, when he descends from Mount Sinai with the tablets. Moses is usually depicted in Western art until the Renaissance with small horns. We've reached the Spanish Steps, also called as Scalinata de Trinità dei Monti in Italian, which climbs a steep slope between Piazza di Spagna at the base and Piazza Trinità dei Monti, dominated by the Trinità dei Monti church at the top. The monumental 135-step staircase was built with funding inherited from the French diplomat Étienne Gouffier. It was built between 1723 and 1725. cradling the Trinità dei Monti church under the patronage of the Bourbon King of France at the top of the steps, and the Spanish embassy to the Holy See in Palazzo Monaldeschi at the base of the steps. The staircase was designed by the architects Francesco De Sanctis and Alessandro Specchi. In Piazza di Spagna, at its base is the early Baroque fountain called Fontana della Barcaccia, Fountain of the Longboat, built in 1627-1629 and often attributed to Pietro Bernini, father of the more famous Gian Lorenzo Bernini, who is said to have collaborated on the decorations. The elder Bernini had been the papal architect since 1623. According to one of the legends, Pope Urban VIII had the fountain installed after being impressed by a boat brought here by a flood of the Tiber. We're going up to the church Santissima Trinità dei Monti, often just called Trinità dei Monti, which is a late Renaissance Roman Catholic titular church. It is best known for its position above the Spanish Steps. In 1494, Saint Francis of Paola, a hermit from Calabria, bought the vineyard from the papal scholar and former patriarch of Aquileia, Ermolao Barbaro, and then obtained authorization from Pope Alexander VI to establish a monastery for the Mennonite monks. In 1502, Louis XII of France began construction of the Trinità dei Monti church next to the monastery to celebrate his successful invasion of Naples. Building work began in the French style with pointed Gothic arches, but construction lagged behind. The current Italian Renaissance church was eventually built in its place and completed in 1585. From here, today's tour continues with a stroll through Villa Borghese Garden, one of Rome's great public gardens, containing a number of buildings, museums, and attractions. It is the third largest public park in Rome, with an area of 80 hectares. The gardens were developed for the Villa Borghese Pinciana, and their current form dates from the late 19th century, when they were restored. The Villa Borghese Pinciana, or Villa Borghese on the Pincian Hill, is the villa built by the architect Flaminio Pinzio. Scipione Borghese used it as a suburban villa, a party villa, on the outskirts of Rome, and to house his art collection. And from Villa Borghese we'll go further and cross the river Tiber, in Italian Trevere, known in antiquity as Flavus, meaning blonde, referring to the yellowish color of its water. It's the third largest river in Italy. The river originates in the mountain Fumaiolo, part of the Apennine Mountains, in the Emilia-Romagna region, and flows 406 kilometers through Tuscany, Urbania, and Lazio, where it joins the Aniene River and flows into the Tyrrhenian Sea between the Ostia and Fiumicino districts. The river achieved lasting fame as the main waterway of the city of Rome, which was founded on its eastern bank. On the other side of the Tiber, we see the Palace of Justice, colloquially nicknamed Il Palazzaccio, meaning either the bad or the ugly palace. It is the seat of the Supreme Court of Cassation and the Public Justice Library of Italy, and is located in the Prati district of Rome, overlooking Piazza dei Tribunali, Via Triboniana, Piazza Cavour, and Via Ulpiano. The large rectangular building was named after the Piedmontese statesman Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, and was built between 1889 and 1911 by the architect Guglielmo Calderini. On the opposite side is the historical Teatro Adriano, today a cinema hall, built in 1898 as a politeama, where opera, dance, comedies, and circus performances took place. On the side of the square there is the Waldensian Church, inaugurated in 1914. It was inspired by the architecture of early Christian basilicas. The square is incorporated into an elegant garden designed by Nicodemo Severi, whose construction officially began in 1884 with the competition for the Cavour monument in front of the palace. The statue by Stefano Galetti was inaugurated in the presence of King Umberto I 11 years later, on September 24, 1895. The work suffered further delays due to the construction of the Palace of Justice, and the elegant garden adorned with oleander and laurel plants and numerous specimens of palm trees, purchased by the municipality of Ventimiglia, was inaugurated only in 1910. Next to it is Castel Sant'Angelo. Hadrian's mausoleum, known as Castel Sant'Angelo, is a cylindrical building in Parco Adriano that was originally commissioned by the Roman Emperor Hadrian as a mausoleum for himself and his family. The building was later used by the popes as a fortress and a castle and is now a museum. So you have to buy a ticket to enter. But as promised in the last clip, linked down below in the description and in the card above and in the beginning of this one, we will explore Rome without spending too much money. So we'll enjoy the lovely view and what this area has to offer, while we tell you a little bit more about this monument that was once the tallest building in Rome. The tomb of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, also called Hadrian's Mole, was erected on the right bank of the Tiber between 134 and 139 AD, and was originally a decorated cylinder with a garden at the top and a golden cavalcade. Hadrian's ashes were placed here a year after his death, at Baie in 138, along with those of his wife Sabina and his first adoptive son, Lucius Aelius, who also died in 138. After Hadrian's death, the mausoleum continued to be used as a burial place for succeeding emperors, the last recorded deposition being of Caracalla in 217. The urns containing the emperor's ashes were probably placed in what is now known as the treasury chamber, deep inside the building. Hadrian also built the Pons Aelius, a superb bridge leading directly to the mausoleum. This bridge still offers picturesque views of central Rome and the left bank of the Tiber, and it is famous for the later addition of the Baroque angel statues which hold up instruments of the Passion of Christ. Much of the tomb's contents and decorations have been lost due to the conversion of the building into a military fortress in 401, and its subsequent inclusion within the Aurelian walls by Flavius Honorius Augustus. The urns and ashes were scattered by Visigothic marauders during Alaric's sack of Rome in 410. And the original decorative bronze and stone statues were thrown at the attacking Goths when they besieged Rome in 537, as Procopius recounts. An unusual survivor, however, is the capstone of a funerary urn, probably of Hadrian's, which took the direction of St. Peter's Basilica and covered the tomb of Otto II and was later incorporated into a massive Renaissance baptistry. And from here you can see the Vatican City, where we'll be going next. The small city is an independent country, a microstate, and an enclave in Rome. This small state became independent from Italy in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty, and is a distinct territory under the full ownership, exclusive dominion, and sovereign authority and jurisdiction of the Holy See itself, a sovereign entity under international law, which supports the city-state power to govern itself, diplomatic and spiritual independence. With an area of 49 hectares and a population approximately of 764 inhabitants in 2023, it is the smallest city-state in the world, both by area and by population. As governed by the Holy See, the Vatican State is an ecclesiastical or sacerdotal monastical state ruled by the Pope, who is the Bishop of Rome and head of the Catholic Church. The highest state officials are all Catholic clergy of various origins. After the Avignon papacy, 1309 to 1377, popes lived mainly at the Apostolic Palace in what is now the Vatican, although they sometimes lived elsewhere. The Holy See dates back to early Christianity and is the main episcopal seat of the Catholic Church, which has approximately 1,329 billion baptized believers in the world. The Vatican City contains religious and cultural sites such as St. Peter's Basilica, the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican Apostolic Library, and the Vatican Museum, amongst others. The Vatican features some of the world's most famous paintings and sculptures, and the Vatican's unique economy is supported financially by donations from the faithful, the sales of postage stamps and souvenirs, museum entry fees, and sales of publications. The Vatican is tax-free and the items are duty-free. The name Vatican was first used in the Lateran Treaty, signed on February 11, 1929, which established the modern city-state named after the Vatican Hill. With its geographical location within the city of Rome, Vatican is derived from the name of the Etruscan settlement Varica or Varicum, located in the general area called by the Romans Ager Vaticum, or the Vatican territory. The Pope, translated as Father, also known as the Supreme Pontiff, Roman Pontiff, or Sovereign Pontiff, is the Bishop of Rome, or historically the Patriarch of Rome, head of the Catholic Church worldwide, and also serves as a head of state or sovereign of the Papal State, and later of the Vatican State since the 8th century. From a Catholic point of view, the primacy of the Bishop of Rome is largely derived from his role as the apostolic successor of Saint Peter, who had his primacy conferred by Jesus, who gave Peter the keys of heaven and the power to bind and untie, naming him as the rock on which the church would be built. With the East-West Schism, the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church split for good in 1054. This fracture was caused more by political events than by slight differences of creed. The Pope angered the Byzantine emperors by siding with the King of the Franks, crowning a rival Roman emperor, usurping the Exarchate of Ravenna and ruling Greek Italy. In the Middle Ages, popes vied with monarchs for power. From 1309 to 1377, the Pope did not live in Rome, but in Avignon. The Avignon papacy was notorious for greed and corruption. During this period, the Pope was effectively an ally of the Kingdom of France, alienating France's enemies such as the Kingdom of England. The Papal Swiss Guard is an armed body that protects the Pope and his residence, and was created on the 22nd of January 1506. It is the only body of Swiss Guards still in operation and is the oldest permanent body in the world still in service for over 5 centuries without interruption. They serve in the Vatican but also during the Pope's travels with the security guards. Their typical colorful Renaissance-style uniforms for solemn ceremonies is accompanied by more sober suits at operational level. The modern guard has the role of personal defense of the pontiff. The Papal Swiss Guard is officially equipped with traditional weapons such as halberds, but all the guards also have modern portable firearms. Since the assassination attempt of John Paul II in 1982, the Swiss Guard has been oriented away from its former more traditional ceremonial role towards a more active role in the defense of the person of the Pope. Recruits in this unit must necessarily be Swiss citizens by birth, Catholic male, between the ages of 19 and 30, and must have completed a period of training in the Swiss Army. St. Peter's Square, where we are now, is a large square located in front of the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, the papal enclave in Rome, and these two sites that are true works of art are free to visit. St. Peter's Square is surrounded by 4 colonnades with a total of 88 enormous columns and 96 statues. Both the square and the basilica are named after Saint Peter, an apostle of Christ, whom the Catholics consider the first pope. At the center of the square is an ancient Egyptian obelisk, erected on its current site in 1586, and Gian Lorenzo Bernini designed the square almost 100 years later. A granite foundation built by Bernini in 1675 matches another designed by Carlo Maderno in 1613. A new monument in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican honors migrants and refugees from around the world. Pope Francis unveiled a sculpture during Mass on Sunday, September the 29th, marking the 105th annual World Day of Migrants and Refugees. The sculpture is titled Angels Unaware by Canadian artist Timothy P. Schmaltz, depicting a refugee boat carrying 140 migrants. The group of figures in Schmaltz's sculpture is eclectic: a Jew escaping Nazi Germany, a pregnant Polish woman fleeing from communism, a Cherokee man traveling the Trail of Tears, a Syrian boy fleeing his country's civil war, and more. The boat is a symbol for the journey that all people of historical periods, races, and religions have undertaken. And with this last walk through the St. Peter's Square in the Vatican, today's excursion comes to an end. If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button. Leave a like and share this video with others. And we will see you next time when we'll take you with us on a walk through the beautiful parks of Rome.